Penguin Random House Audio presents Push Off From Here: 9 Essential Truths to Get You Through Sobriety and Everything Else. This is the author, Laura Mckowen. For all the noodles. Introduction. In 2016, I received an email from a woman whose sister was struggling with alcohol. The woman who wrote me had been going through the typical emotional meat grinder of loving someone caught in addiction. She was exhausted, heartbroken, frustrated, hopeful at times, and hopeless at others. Her sister had started pulling away and slipping into dark territory. She didn't know what to say, so she asked me, "What would you have wanted to hear?" I was just shy of 2 years sober then. The woman contacted me because I'd been sharing my battle with addiction and fight to get sober on a blog, a podcast, and through social media. I had somehow, and barely, climbed out from the dark place her sister was in. I wrote her a long response, and at the end of my letter, I told her that if all my words were too much, she could just use a list, my list. I wrote the 9 most important things I had needed to hear, from myself, from others, from what I understood to be God, when I was in the dark hell of my addiction. They were the things I still needed to hear daily in sobriety. 1. It is not your fault. 2. It is your responsibility. 3. It is unfair that this is your thing. 4. This is your thing. 5. This will never stop being your thing until you face it. 6. You can't do it alone. 7. Only you can do it. 8. I love you. 9. I will never stop reminding you of these things. In the years that followed her letter, I found myself referring back to these 9 things often. It's not your fault. It is your responsibility. It's unfair that this is your thing. This is your thing. You can't do it alone. Only you can do it. Whenever I'd come up against something challenging, facing the massive debt I had accumulated, leaving my career in advertising and jumping into self-employment as a single mother, dealing with the trauma underneath my drinking, confronting the food and body issues that resurfaced in sobriety, and more. Whatever painful, hard thing came up, the 9 things seemed to provide a touch point of wisdom, guidance, and reassurance. I know it's odd to say my own words helped me, but it's true. And anyway, I feel like they came through me rather than from me, as is often the experience with writing. When I published my sobriety memoir, We Are the Luckiest, in January 2020, I knew the 9 things would be the epigraph. After We Are the Luckiest came out, I immediately began to hear from readers who found solace in the 9 things. I received screenshots, shares on social media, emails and letters, and artwork people had created, explaining how helpful they were in not only addressing the specific challenge of getting sober, but, as I had found, in facing all kinds of other things too, from divorce and infertility to eating disorders and chronic pain. A pandemic spurred evolution. The COVID-19 pandemic hit a few months after We Are the Luckiest came out. I was in the middle of traveling around the United States promoting the book when lockdowns began. I canceled my plans and watched alongside the rest of the world as all our institutions shut down. Schools, airports, churches, banks, restaurants. Each of these closures seemed more surreal than the last, but I was shocked when I saw an email from my local Alcoholics Anonymous chapter announcing they would be closing the building until further notice. I'd never seen this happen before. Not for New England blizzards, holidays, public emergencies, never. Although I wasn't much involved with AA at that point, the availability and steadiness of meetings were still a comfort to me, Any day of the week, there were multiple meetings available. It was a place I knew I could go, but also somewhere I could send others. While I felt strong and supported in my own sobriety then, I thought of all the people who were newly sober or struggling and depended on those meetings to stay sober. Those who would understandably relapse given this crisis and would have no place to go. Those who would no doubt start drinking more heavily under the pressure of lockdowns and find themselves suffering alone. Of course, it wasn't only my local chapter of AA that closed down, everything was closing everywhere. AA has millions of members worldwide who rely on those meetings to keep them sober. And for most folks, like me, sobriety is a matter of life and death. These were parents and children, and siblings and teachers and healthcare workers and grandparents and caretakers and folks whom other people depended on every day. Because I'd already built a large community around sobriety through my writing in the years prior, I felt I could do something to help, at least until things returned to normal, which at that point we presumed would only be a matter of weeks. Without thinking about it too much, I decided one Saturday morning in mid-March to host a couple of free online sobriety support meetings over the weekend. I put together a simple sign-up page where people could register to be sent the Zoom information, announced it on social media, and broadcasted it to my newsletter list. I cobbled together a loose format based on what I'd liked best about AA meetings: an opening statement about intention, a discussion topic or speaker, and then time for individual shares from the people attending about their challenges, wins, and whatever else might be on their mind that day as it related to sobriety, with some guidelines. I also added my own elements: meditation, reading poetry or passages from books, and occasional feedback and commentary on shares. On Saturday, March 14th, I hosted the first meeting. More than 100 people showed up, and there was a palpable sense of relief that we could gather together, even if it was only virtually, and ground ourselves in a common purpose when everything else was terrifying and out of control. Most miraculous to me in those first meetings was how varied the attendees were. There were people who'd never been to any kind of sobriety support meeting because they'd never been part of AA or something similar. Longtime AA members who were curious to try something different, people in long-term sobriety, and many who are still trying to get a start. There were sober-curious folks who were just starting to wonder about their drinking, and people who had been sober for years but found themselves on shaky ground because of lockdowns. So many people who'd never before experienced community in their sobriety remarked that they were blown away that something like this was possible when they'd been going it alone for so long. I'd had a strong, solid sober circle for many years at that point, and I'd forgotten how impossible and lonely it was without one. Before that first weekend of meetings ended, I created a schedule for the coming week. I hosted 2 meetings every day, one in the morning and one at night, thinking it would be a temporary thing until stay-at-home orders were lifted. I started asking folks I knew in the recovery community to speak at some of the meetings. As the days went on, the word spread, and we started to see 200, 300, 400 people show up at the meetings from as far away as Yemen, Singapore, and Australia. Something special was happening, and we all felt it. While the world was unraveling, the time together in these meetings made us feel connected, grounded, and useful. As I approached the 5th week of running twice daily meetings, COVID cases continued to climb, and it became more and more clear that lockdowns were not temporary. While I didn't want to stop running the meetings, it was becoming more than I could handle alone while trying to navigate parenting, my new role as a 6th grade homeschool teacher, working, and the rest of the pandemic. When I announced plans to discontinue the meetings at the end of April, I received hundreds of emails and messages asking if I could find a way to keep them going. After a few phone calls with family and friends and some quick deliberation, I decided to hire support and give it a shot. In the last week,
Sample complete. Ready to continue?